Thank you. Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our military is strong because each member pledges loyalty to the Constitution, not to a specific president or a political party. And in return, military service and promotion are not tied to a political party or personal loyalty. President Trump threatens that political neutrality with no explanation. He has fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the chief of naval operations. Secretary Hegseth has purged top military lawyers and called for removing, quote, woke generals. Former defense secretaries have called this a, quote, new political standard for military service. So, Mr. Tada, if confirmed, you would be the defense secretary's principal advisor on personnel matters. You've already made your views clear. On November 2024, you posted on X that a, quote, must do, close quote, for the Trump administration will be to, quote, review every four-star appointed by Biden and thank many for their service before firing them. Mr. Tada, what evaluations did you do for each of the dozens of four-star generals and admirals to convince you that each of them needed to be fired?
Hey, fellow patriots. Welcome back to the channel, your home for truth, freedom, and American values. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because you don't want to miss when we take on the left's latest attacks on our country, our Constitution, and our leaders. Today, folks, we've got a real doozy. We're reacting to a Senate hearing where Senator Elizabeth Warren, yes, that Elizabeth Warren, went after Mr. Tada, President Trump's nominee, for a top job at the Department of Defense. Now, I've watched the whole thing, and I've got plenty to say. So let's get into it.
Senator, that comment was in response to a CNN article that had credible sources that several admirals and generals were having discussions on how to resist lawful orders from the president usurping his Article II constitutional authority as commander-in-chief, which I find unacceptable. I think we can all agree that the Constitution of the United States that we swear an oath of office to, that I have done for many times in my career, is the ultimate penultimate document that we support and that we swear an allegiance to. And so if there were people that were having those conversations, if there were admirals and generals that were having those conversations.
Mr. Tada, I have your tweet here, and your tweet doesn't say, I want to investigate person by person and see what they've done. I also want to make clear that when generals are having conversations about what to do if they receive illegal orders so that they can still follow their obligations under the Constitution of the United States, then they are following the law. They are not breaking the law. But let's go on to what else you have said.
Senator, if I might, the article said controversial, did not say illegal. And so controversial is very subject to interpretation.
I just want to clarify here. You want to say, you want to fire everybody. I've got your tweet here.
I don't want to fire anybody,
you think
Senator.
They gave controversial statements? I'm sorry, it says before firing them. Mr. Chairman, could I enter this into the record, please? Mr. Tada's tweet.
Is there objection? There being no objection, it is
All right,
so admitted.
Let me try another one. On November 2024, you posted on X that the Trump administration should choose only leaders who are, quote, all oars in the water to achieve Trump Agenda 47. That suggests that you believe that generals should be picked for loyalty to Donald Trump. Is that right? Is that what you believe?
That is not what I believe, Senator.
Then why did you post this?
Well, I was a private citizen when I posted that, and
So when you were a private citizen, you said things you didn't believe?
As
Still are a private
Agenda
citizen
47.
right now, Mr. Tada.
Senator, let him answer the question.
Senator, I'm respectfully trying to answer your question. Agenda 47 talks about shipbuilding. It talks about reducing the wars that we engage in. And so as a leader, I support the idea, I support the president's vision that he had in Agenda 47, though, from a foreign policy perspective, and that's what I was referring to.
That is not what this tweet says. Mr. Chairman, may I enter this tweet into the record?
Without objection.
In January 2025, just 4 months ago, Mr. Tada, you posted on X that planning for President Trump's inauguration should, your word, assume that the National Guard and DOD are, quote, compromised at a minimum by hatred of the incoming administration. What information did you have about each member of the Guard and DOD that caused you not only to draw this conclusion, but to put it out there in public?
Senator, I had no information that
So you just said it about our Guard. You know, competence is based on the experience and performance of a military leader. Evidently, you have no information individually about the generals, the admirals, and the members of our National Guard and DOD who serve this country, and yet you're willing to say that they all need to be fired or treated as traitors. You seem to think that if a general or admiral was promoted during a Democratic administration, that person should be automatically fired. That's just a political purge and a pretty standard move for a dictatorship. I think it disqualifies you for this office.
Thank you.
Here we go. Right off the bat, Warren says our military strength comes from loyalty to the Constitution, not to any president or political party. And you know what? On paper, she's exactly right. That's how it's supposed to work. The military swears an oath to defend the Constitution. But let me ask you this. How many times have we seen, over the last few years, top brass at the Pentagon acting more like political operatives than neutral defenders of the Republic? Too many to count. Now Warren jumps on Mr. Tada for his social media post from last year and earlier this year, saying he wanted to review every four-star appointed by Biden and thank many for their service before firing them. She calls this a political purge. Listen, folks, let's talk about what's really going on. For 8 years under Obama, and then under Biden, we've watched as the Pentagon has been packed with left-wing ideologues, woke generals, and the kind of folks who care more about pronouns and pushing radical social agendas than they do about military readiness, discipline, or victory on the battlefield. So when a Republican president comes in and says, let's take a look at our leadership and see if they're actually on board with our national security priorities, suddenly it's a purge. Give me a break. Here's where Tada explains himself. He says his post was in response to a report that some generals were talking about resisting lawful orders from the president. Now, if that's true, that's not just concerning, that's outrageous. The president is the commander-in-chief. If military leaders are plotting to ignore or undermine the president's orders, that's not defending the Constitution. That's insubordination, maybe even mutiny. But does Warren care about that? No. She twists it around and accuses Tada of being the dangerous one for simply wanting to make sure our generals are loyal to their oath. Folks, the hypocrisy here is stunning. Let's be clear. Nobody is saying military leaders should obey illegal orders. But here's the rub. Who gets to decide what's illegal? The left wants to set the standards so high that any conservative president's orders can be declared controversial or unlawful just because they don't like them. That's not how a constitutional republic works. There's a chain of command, there are checks and balances, and there's a difference between following orders and outright insubordination. Warren reads another tweet about all oars in the water to achieve Trump Agenda 47 and says this means Mr. Tada wants a loyalty test. Well, let me ask you folks, isn't that what every administration does? Every president, Democrat or Republican, wants advisors and generals who will actually implement their vision, not undermine it at every turn. When Biden came in, did he keep all of Trump's appointees? Of course not. He replaced them with his own people. That's normal. But if Trump wants to do it, suddenly it's the end of democracy. Here's another one. Warren reads a tweet where Tada says the National Guard and DOD might be compromised by hatred of the incoming administration. Now, I'll admit that's a strong statement. But let's not pretend that there haven't been leaks, sabotage, and outright resistance to Republican presidents from within the bureaucracy, including the Pentagon. We've seen whistleblowers, anonymous sources, all kinds of games played by people who are supposed to be apolitical. Tada admits he didn't have hard evidence. Maybe he should have been more careful with his words. But you know what? The concern is legitimate. We need to know that our armed forces are following the orders of the commander-in-chief, period. And now, the grand finale. Warren says Tada's views disqualify him for office. Folks, this is the same playbook the Democrats have been using for years. Smear, discredit, and attack anyone who dares to challenge the left-wing establishment in Washington. We need leaders who are willing to stand up, call out corruption, and make sure the military is focused on defending America. Not playing politics, not pushing social experiments, and not undermining the will of the people. So what do I think? I think Mr. Tada is right to be concerned. I think President Trump is right to want a team he can trust, a team that's not going to stab him in the back or slow walk his orders. The American people voted for a new direction, and the president has every right to make sure his team is on board. And to all the Elizabeth Warrens out there, you don't get to lecture us about democracy or political purges when your side has spent years weaponizing every government agency against their political opponents. It's time to put America first again. It's time to clean house, not out of spite or revenge, but to restore trust, accountability, and readiness in our military. If you agree, hit that like button, share this video far and wide, and tell me in the comments, do you think it's time for a shakeup at the Pentagon? Should the president have loyal, competent leaders at the top? I want to hear from you. Until next time, stay strong, stay free, and God bless America.